The Legend of Zelda, considered one of the greatest series of all time, never having a bad mainline game, and is widely considered to be one of the most consistently quality franchise underneath Nintendo. It has been revolutionary 3 separate times, which is absolutely insane. How do you do that? Revolutionized all of gaming by having a battery pack in its cartridge letting you save games without a password, a feature that is still standard today. It revolutionized 3D adventure games and open world games with Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild respectively, both of which being considered some of the greatest games of all time. I just wish I could love the series as much as others.
My history of Zelda is very strange.
I keep buying and playing the games, but I hardly complete them. I've come close with one and been 2 others, but I can't call them extremely good. Just okay. I just wish I could fall in love with these stories and worlds, but nearly every time I try, I fail. I do get some enjoyment from these games, otherwise I wouldn't keep playing them, but I just don't seem to get very far. I believe this is for a few reasons. Reason number 1, I can't puzzle. Despite my many attempts to get into puzzle games, I failed most of them. My problem-solving skills are terrible, and a lot of the early Zelda games didn't help that. They had cryptic designs, and this is an idiot. One of the few puzzle games I've gone into are quite simple. Take Snipper Clips for example. Each puzzle has a clearly defined objective and limits to what you can do. There are some timing and platforming elements sprinkled in there which I feel like makes it a tad easier. While some puzzles are deceptively hard, the objective is always clear and there aren't too many ways to do it. Now add on items not knowing what the hell to do and possibly missing what I need and you've got the average Zelda puzzle. I just never have a clue on what to do. And I don't like experimenting and failing, then feeling like I've gone nowhere. I hate not knowing what the hell to do, and experimenting is frustrating. Especially when I repeat stuff and it doesn't work. Then later, I realize I was correct, and it was just slightly off. I also could be wandering around a dungeon for half an hour for a key, not finding where I need to go, and it turns out I've passed where it needs to be 5 times when I do half the dungeon again. Thanks, Oracle of Ages! Now I do eventually complete some of these games, but most of them I don't, because I get too frustrated and annoyed with the puzzles and such, and I don't want to come back in them, and I want to throw them outside. How do I complete these games? It's because of a holy 2 guides are kind of required.
For me, Zelda games.
Really, any game which isn't a straight line from point A to point B. I need a guide to help for at least some of it. I usually go to Zelda Dungeon My Beloved for my Zelda guides because it's really easy to follow, gives you a map of the dungeon, and picture to make sure that you aren't accidentally 2 screens to the right of where you're meant to be. This can come with some problems though. If a puzzle requires an item and I don't have it, I have to look back and find out that the item's halfway across the map and need to go on an exhibition to find it. Why'd you assume I would find it, Nintendo?
Do I now have to talk to every NPC in existence to find every item, or need to enter every cave? I generally ignore most NPCs because half the time they have nothing to say.
And they're not even entertaining lines either. Sometimes they are, but a lot of the times they're not.
These guys also just tell you how to do the puzzles, which ruins some of the fun of the game. It makes many of the rooms inside essentially irrelevant and makes each dungeon closer to a room of enemies.
Even then. 3. The base combat isn't great. Personally, I don't find the enemies in Zelda games to be too interesting pre-Breath of the Wild. The combat feels identical between entries in the same respective style. Breath of the Wild is the best in this regard. I have found it the most consistently fun and in-depth. I find the enemy encounters repetitive, and I just swing my sword until they decide to die. I don't find myself having much strategy or satisfaction in landing a hit or avoiding attacks, due to a thing I like to call a shield. The shield makes it so nearly all attacks just bounce off the shield. This is really good in the 2D games, and to target enemies, which is highly recommended in the 3D ones, automatically pulls it up. Now why don't you just do a Dark Souls and not use the shield? Because, especially in the 2D ones, I just get murdered. Skillful dodging isn't satisfying, and projectiles get fired on seemingly random cycles sometimes, and I can't dodge them in time by wandering out of the way, and I get murdered. Now the combat to me isn't completely unenjoyable, it's okay. But I don't know, Breath of the Wild just does everything a lot better. The enemy encounters, the skill required to beat them, the fun of just blowing them to smithereens by tactically shooting hundreds of arrows at them. Can you tell it's one of the few Zelda games I've actually beaten? It never did what I like to call 4, the Zelda Curse. The next one's very spooky, so come close. Come closer. The late game blows. I'm personally of the opinion that most Zelda games just get worse as you progress through them. Now this may be me being a stupid idiot and the puzzles getting harder. Even then, for a level I didn't even use a guide in, I'm still not having much fun, so that makes me think the puzzles aren't the problem. I feel like there's just a difficulty spike from where the enemies become absolutely nothing to deal with to the bane of my existence. It doesn't feel like the challenge has gone like this, more like this. Also, in later dungeons of a game, you could have like 12 hearts and only spawn with 3, which is like, why? Give me at least half health so I don't have to go through an entire 5-story dungeon with 3 hearts, where I feel like I need to constantly rewind because I can't heal without having to do the past 3 hours all over again. To fail, just needing to restart, wasting another 3 hours. God, kill me now. And in the 2 N64 games, I could not get very far in them at all. I gave up on Ocarina of Time in the Forest Temple, and I gave up on Majora's Mask just after I killed the Zora. I will say though that holy crap, the 2 Remembrance cutscenes before you get the 2 masks are magnificent. They are framed so well, and especially the Zora one. They perfectly tell you parts of a character and actually made me feel some emotion more than most video game stories do. And I love those cutscenes so much.
Too bad I 5 generally don't care about the stories in my games. I personally prefer gameplay and mechanics over the stories in my games. And the main reason I wouldn't is if it's like Phoenix Wright and 90% of a game is text. Those types of games where it's not trying to be an in-depth adventure game with all these items and action-filled gameplay, and the story is good, or the game is at the very least funny is when I enjoy them.
But Zelda's trying to be both, and in my mind, the story has to be extremely good for it to factor into my thoughts, and in my opinion, the Zelda series is never able to captivate me in its world and get me interested in its characters. When I do start getting a bit invested, like the Majora's Mask one, I need Kai, the character instantly dies, the same information gets repeated over and over again. This guy's so great, I get it! And then the game just starts getting less fun and I get sick of it and quit. God, I wish I could love these games. I wish I could see the glimmer of revolution and fun and just everything that others can. But unfortunately, I can't.
I just can't get as obsessed and enthralled with these games worlds as others can. The only time I can is when it strays from the core of Zelda and becomes Breath of the Wild. I just can't get into these games. Now Triforce Quest, that's a bajillion times better than Zelda. 11 out of 10. Play it now. Buy a Wii U.